Hi, it's Ian. Welcome back to my 30 Days of Knife Skills. This is day 17, and I'm working with Romano beans. These just came from the farmer's market, and it's something I've never had before, never heard of or worked with, and they look like, to me, they look like overgrown green beans that you forgot on the vine, although they are thinner than those typically. But that's what they look like, which they're usually fibrous and not very tasty, and it's something that you have to cook for a very long time to break down. So I thought, okay, what is that? Is this some kind of a weird gimmick or a scam or something like that? But nope, it's a specific variety called Romano beans. I looked it up. People talk about it being very juicy and sweet and good for eating raw, which is a little bit hard to believe when you see this kind of thing. They look kind of fibrous and tough, but actually it is. It's fairly tender. I'm not sure if it's that sweet or these are that sweet, but they have good flavor. They taste very green, even more green tasting than regular green beans. So I've only tried it raw. I have not cooked it yet, but I think cooking will be a really good thing. Maybe not overcooking, but just a quick cook. So since my green bean plant is still not producing anything in the garden yet, just work with these for now. It's pretty much the same thing as green beans. The first thing I would do is to take off these ends. So I would just line it up and take the knife and get all those off. And then try to figure out what is the next step. So if I was going to make a salad, maybe I could just do this kind of shape, depending on what kind of salad. This might be good for some kind of salad that has similar pieces, similar size pieces, like if you're going to put corn in or diced tomatoes, onions, things like that. That might be good to kind of make it into similar shapes and sizes. Another way, if it's maybe more of a green salad, I might go on a very, very longer bias like that. So something like this makes it a little bit easier to eat and to mix into other maybe greens like that. And you can see that the bean portion is quite small. It's very small, and it's sort of translucent with these. So it's not like you're getting bean pieces that are going to fall out like a lot of other kinds of varieties of beans. So something like that might be good. I could also see going even thinner and going even more on a bias for cold noodle dishes. So thin julienne of carrot, cucumber, and maybe radish. And if I was going to do something along with that, go on even more of a bias and go even thinner to match sort of the texture and the shape of noodles, especially something like somen or soba. I think this looks really good. This might be a good thing. I might also put this in cold water and let it sit for a few minutes to let it firm up and maybe extract some of the harsher elements. It'll be a little bit more subdued in flavor if you do that. So this looks like it could work. I've never worked with these beans, so I'm not really sure exactly what to do. But these shapes, it looks like they would be really good raw. You could also salt them. I would probably try 2% salt if I chopped a whole bunch of up, maybe in these kinds of shapes, and maybe mixed a little bit of lemon zest with salt and maybe a little bit of chili. That might be a good quick cold salad if you just let it sit in the fridge for a couple of hours. I think that might be really good. But the thing that most likely I will be doing, and what I do probably most often with green beans when they start to go crazy in the garden, is to blanch them for maybe anywhere between 2 and 4 minutes, depending on the hardness. I usually blanch them whole, so I might not even take off the ends. Just blanch them whole in salted water, and then shock them in cold water, and then dry them off, and then cut into about this size. Or if I was going to saute, I might do the same thing in this So you could also blanch after cutting, but I think it works better just to blanch whole and then cut afterward. So this is a little bit longer than a 1-inch piece. After blanching and cutting into this shape, I would most often be doing a goma-ae, which is the Japanese sesame dressing. You have a suribachi and a surikogi, which is the Japanese version of the mortar and pestle. It's more of a textured piece on the bottom that you can grind, especially things like sesame seeds, and it's very effective in grinding. So it's a very simple ratio or recipe for goma-ae that I've been using for years now. It's just a 4-3-2-1. Often, if I'm making about maybe 3 or 4 servings, so maybe about 4 or 5 times as much as what's here, then I'll be using teaspoons. But the good thing about the ratio is that you can scale up and down depending on whatever kind of spoon you want. If it's a small amount, I might use a half teaspoon. If it's a large amount, maybe a tablespoon or a half tablespoon. But very simply, you take the 4 parts, so 4 teaspoons of white sesame. Doesn't have to be white, but that's usually what I have on hand. So I'll put that into the mortar and pestle and grind it down. And then the 3 and 2, the 3 is the shoyu, and then 2 is sugar. So it could be any sugar, but usually I'm throwing in brown sugar for that. So once the sesame seeds are ground down, then I'll add the shoyu and the sugar, and then mix that all together and grind it down. And the 1 is the liquid element. So that can be, usually in Japan they will add dashi. So if you have some kind of dashi available, then you could put that in there. It could really be any kind of liquid. It could be water. Sometimes I have beer around, so I'll put some beer in, or sake. It doesn't really matter as long as it thins it out a little bit. Otherwise, it gets a little bit too thick. And it kind of depends. If your vegetable is very dry, then you might need to go a little bit more on the liquid. If it's kind of dripping with water, and you haven't really dried it off enough, then maybe you might not even need that 1 part of liquid. But typically it's dashi. So yeah, usually there's some kind of, I've even used wine. Really anything laying around works. So that 4-3-2-1, sesame, shoyu, sugar, liquid is a very, very useful thing to know. So I've never tried it in other ways, like in a food processor or some other kind of way of making that dressing. It might be possible, or in a blender or a hand blender or something like that in a larger amount. I'm sure it would work fine. A variation of that is to switch the shoyu or part of the shoyu out with miso, which makes it really good. Miso and sesame seeds are a great combination too. So that's another way to do it. So that's pretty much the goma-ae is something that all summer long I'll be making constantly. Something like with green beans, or something like this, the Romano bean, or green leaves like spinach or chard, kale, or things like radish tops. All of those work really, really well with the goma-ae. So just for that, it's worth getting the Japanese mortar and pestle. It's a really good tool to have in your kitchen, especially in the summertime. So that's it for these Romano beans. I'm looking forward to experimenting a little bit more to learn more about this particular bean. But anyway, let me know if you have any questions, and we'll see you on the next one.